So let's start with Wheeler.
All right.
He proudly publicized a letter refusing help from federal officers to address the violence in Portland. Zach, if you would show my screen here. This is his tweet. He says, this is from 23 hours ago, so from yesterday. Today I sent this letter via email to real Donald Trump, declining his recurring offer to aid Portland by sending federal enforcement to the city. And the letter begins, Dear President Trump, yet again, you said you offered to aid Portland by sending in federal law enforcement to our city. On behalf of the city of Portland, no thanks. We don't need your politics of division and demagoguery. Portlanders are on to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, as one commenter noted in response to this is Zaid Jilani, it's like Wheeler is a double agent for Trump. He's certainly acting as if to promote the likelihood that Trump will get reelected, given what actually those of us who are here know to be true, which is in part, I mean, we've talked about this many times already on the podcast. Portland is being used as a bludgeon on both sides by the mainstream media. To a large extent, it's either not being covered at all by the mainstream media on the left, or when it is, it's at those moments when there is a far-right presence in the streets as well, and then they can truthfully claim that extremists on both sides had it out, as happened a week ago today, I think it was. And of course, on the right, the mainstream media, insofar as it exists outside of Fox, but Fox included, talks about the exact opposite. It only talks about the violence and never discusses any possible legitimacy to the protests that we're seeing. But the fact is, downtown Portland is, during the day, looks like a former city. I don't like the term war zone because I think that evokes something very particular that I'm not sure I know enough about all of the intricacies of to say a lot about. But at the end of May, just as many businesses downtown were preparing to open up after months of COVID lockdowns, the protests started, the violence began at a regular moment every night shortly thereafter, and those riots have happened every single night uninterrupted for, I think it's more than 90 days now.
I believe there has been one interruption.
There's been one interruption.
There has been one interruption.
After the feds were pulled, after Governor Brown negotiated.
2 nights ago, there was one night and there was speculation about what it might be. And it turns out that what we're going to talk about soon here may have something to do with the actual reasoning, but I'm not sure we know.
Okay. As viewers, regular viewers of this podcast will be well aware, stores are vandalized. Many have been boarded up and closed since then. There's been nightly violence. Homeless encampments are spreading even further than they were previously. I mean, all of the West Coast cities have had a problem with homelessness for a very long time. There's garbage in the streets. There's increasingly human feces in the streets, and not just that being thrown by idiot rioters, but actually it's just literally becoming a cesspool. And it makes a person wonder how anyone who calls himself a leader could possibly let this happen to his city. This is a beautiful city. It's been beautiful, open to everyone, replete with culinary and cultural and nature experiences, and this is just a disaster. So we see in the Oregonian on August 26th, business owners reporting being ever more frustrated. On August 27th, we see, I guess, Zach, you could put this up very briefly. We see a report that the Portland Business Alliance and 70 other business and civic leaders were on the phone with Mayor Wheeler on Thursday morning to discuss his plan to revive downtown. In which one of the things in this piece says, Wheeler also said Wednesday that ending nightly violence and getting our community back on its feet would be a major priority for the city and something he believed was a necessary prerequisite to the economic recovery of downtown. Well, them's easy words. There's no evidence that he's doing anything to that end. And then...
Well, in fact, he is doing exactly the opposite. Right. He is treating the nightly riots as if they have some legitimacy. And you said earlier the protests might have some legitimacy. I want to be very careful. The anger that fuels the protests
Yes.
comes from a legitimate place. I don't think these protests have any legitimacy anymore. They have
Anymore.
lost.
Yes.
They have lost any legitimacy they might once have had by not doing anything to stem the violence that arises from them. The violence is predictable, and that means that everybody who signs up, even the people who aren't being violent, are signing up for something that leads to violence. That's the responsibility is on them.
And people are flocking there in part because it's an excuse for a street party. There's no other place to do it. So,
but Mayor Wheeler's behavior, I'm just guessing here. I've been very busy with Unity stuff. Am I right that his behavior has made the protesters enthusiastic about Mayor Wheeler himself, that they're very pleased with his behavior?
They love him. He's completely on their side. Wait, no? Let's see, where have we seen this before? Like every time this happens, yes, at Evergreen, yes, every place else, when you have a weak leader who pretends to be on the side of the protesters, they still aren't going to love you. They're never going to love you, Ted. So how about stand up to them and stop this? So Zach, show my screen here. We have, you don't have to, I don't think you need to. This is just, this is video of protesters going into the lobby of Wheeler's condo, presumably it says apartment. I doubt he's a renter, but if he's lucky, maybe he is. In which they demand that he resign, abolish the police by 2022 with no tech or private replacement, and allot saved resources to BIPOC communities and city services. So, another classic move from the playbook of, I'm sorry, but just witless protesters. You can't have both of those things. You can't both resign and abolish the police by 2022. And finally, they're saying it. They're actually saying it. Abolish, not defund. Abolish the police by 2022 with no tech or private replacement.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what he should say in response to this? No.
Yeah. Thank you, but no. Get out of my building. Stop it in every regard. And yes, I am sending in reinforcements. And no, we are not going to be violent with you unless you force our hand.
Yeah, it's totally predictable. And the fact is, here's what Wheeler is clearly missing. He has a vast population of people who now have every right to fear that this is going to come into their neighborhoods and do who knows what. They've been harassing people, shining bright lights into their windows, cursing at them, demanding that they come out into the streets. Now they're in Wheeler's own building, right? So Portlanders have a very real reason to fear that this nightly riot phenomenon will come directly to them at home, right? That means there will be an awful large fraction of the population of Portland that would be grateful to have this reined in finally. It has no legitimacy. It is announcing the fact that it is vile and irresponsible. Literally, we have people throwing feces at police officers. So there would clearly be a great deal of support if he would just behave like a mayor. Now, will they say that he's part of a fascist crackdown if he actually has the police do their job and arrest lawbreakers and take them to jail? Of course they will. Totally predictable. On the other hand, will a large fraction of the population of Portland breathe a sigh of relief that finally governance is doing what it is supposed to do, what society depends on it doing? Of course there would be.
Right.
And because he only hears the vocal part,
Yep.
right? The vocal part is the tantrum. Right? This is a tantrum, and he is responding to it because the adults are being quiet, waiting for him to do his job. And the fact is, do your job, and the adults will support it. It's guaranteed.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be the adult. When you elect a mayor, you're electing an adult in part to act. And this isn't a perfect analogy. A mayor isn't a parent, but what everyone probably has seen: the screaming toddler in the supermarket who is having a meltdown because they can't get the thing that they want. And most people have probably also seen the parent say, no, you can't, and finally cave. What does that do? It results in the screaming toddler very, very briefly being quiet. But what that toddler has learned is that tantrums work. That is what is happening here. That is bad parenting. That is bad mayorship. That is bad leading in every regard. You don't cave to tantrums. You just don't do it. And it's not that anyone will be perfect in this regard. And there are some situations where, oh my God, this is exactly the wrong moment. Okay, you little brat, you little rioters, whatever it is, I'm going to have to give you this thing right now. But you can be damn sure that once we get to a place where I can enforce good behavior, I am going to do so fairly and justly. And you are going to learn that this does not pay. Why are we letting rioting and looting and violence pay? Why would you do that? If you actually care about the city, if you actually care about society, if you actually care about democracy, you don't. You're either not thinking it through in any way, and frankly, he's had plenty of time, or you actually don't care about the city or society or democracy. So which is it?